All right, so let's dive in. Um, we are now entering the fourth quarter, right? And I don't want to beat around the bush about this fourth quarter. Um, it's going to be very, very challenging. And the reason why is because interest rates can't come down. And if they do, it's probably not going to be significant. I'm not predicting the future. It's just, the thing that we're ultimately forecasting. And so I was having a conversation with one of my coaching clients on Thursday, Matt Perry. And I was talking about like the best ways that we can ultimately prepare the businesses that we all own and operate for the fourth quarter. Now, when I talk about businesses, the thing that I want you to understand is that I just mean a series of people. How do we best prepare our people for the fourth quarter? Now, one thing that has come to light because of the intensity of the market since 2020, really through last year, we kind of forgot about seasonality. And I know that I've mentioned that before on here, but I think it's worth noting again that it is very natural for the market to kind of boost right now. We come out of the summer season, right? People kind of wrap up their last vacations. For most people now, their kids are back in school. And we see a little boost typically until like the end of October as far as contracts are concerned. And then it's like that season where there's a number of people who are going to be saying things like, hey, we're probably just going to wait until next year. And so I bring that up because we haven't had that at least for a few years, and some seasonality is very natural. And one of the things that I've ultimately noticed, and this is something that Diana Kokoska used to say, was that when the clock strikes midnight from Halloween, so we go from October to November, it's a lot like the story of Cinderella, and realtors become realtor-orellas. They turn into pumpkins. And I think of work as it relates to what we do in three different modes. And I know some of you may have different descriptions of this, but this is how I think about it. When we work, we have active, passive, and off. Active, passive, and off. Active means you are actively nailing your 20%. Passive means that you're working, but you're only doing the 80%. So that's like a buyer comes to you, you write a contract. If somebody calls and says, hey, I want to list my house, you'll go do it, but you're not really doing the 20%. And then off is you're not working at all. And one of the exercises that I would love for each and every one of you to do, and Rainmakers, I would like for you to do this with your teams, this is a great time of year to do it, is I want you to look at from now until the end of the year, and I want you to mark your time off. So for example, I take the last week of December every year from like Christmas Eve until New Year's Day. I always take that week off. We typically go on a cruise like around Thanksgiving. So we typically have a week off then. But I want each and every one of you to look at the rest of the year and mark your time off. And you're simultaneously marking your time on, meaning you're going to go into active mode, right? You're going to nail your 20%. The goal here is to completely miss the whole passive mindset that we're going to just, sit around and wait and, hope things come our way. We're going to actively nail the 20% in the time that we're on, and we're going to be completely off in the time that we have off. So that's number one. Look at your schedule from now until the end of the year and mark your time off so that you know when you are on, and avoid the whole passive thing. Okay. The second piece is there's this idea, and many of you are familiar with it, which is the 5 stages of grief. Now, some people call it 7. It can be different, but I like the 5 stages, and I'll read these to you slowly so that you can write them down. The first one is denial. Second, anger. Third, bargaining. Fourth, depression. And fifth is acceptance. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. This is what happens on January 2nd. If you have lived your life in the passive mode in the fourth quarter, you're going to wake up and realize that your pipeline is dry and you've got a minimum of 90 days before you're going to see any real momentum in your life or in your business. And people roll through this grieving period, the 5 stages of grief. And here's the part that I really hate outside of the, mountain that you now have to climb, is we start to regret our holiday seasons. It's kind of like when I remember getting married and my wife and I decided, because our parents couldn't really help us with the wedding, that we weren't going to go into any debt for our wedding. We were going to pay cash for everything. If we couldn't pay cash, we weren't going to do it. And our weddings weren't as elaborate as some of the other weddings that our friends had. But what was interesting is I never regretted my wedding, where the people who put them on credit cards or put her ring on a credit card, they regretted that shit because they were still paying for it years later. And I don't want any one of you having to experience the 5 stages of grief of your holidays because you lived in the passive mode from November until January 2nd. Did I say that you shouldn't take time off? No, that's where we started, right? And yet that whole cycle is so brutal, especially because for many of us, unless you live in a snowbird market, your market isn't really going to pick back up until February. So really pay attention to that. And here's how we're going to actually help you avoid the 5 stages of grief. And this is the last thing, Rainmakers, I really would love you to do this with your teams, is we do this in bold. And I think it's such a cool exercise. And we typically write a letter to ourselves a year from now, right? And I had one recently pop up in my memories on Facebook. And this was a letter that was like 7 or 8 years old. And literally 90% of it had come true. It was really, really cool to see that. But what I would love each and every one of you to do is to write a letter. And if you're not a writer, record a video, but some form of communication that is from your future self. And I want you to imagine that you're going to get it or open it on January 2nd. Now, if you really want to do this and you want to send it to us, type it up, put it in a Google Doc, put it in an email, we will take that, print it, and mail it to you so that it gets to you at the appropriate time. But can you guys still see me? We good? That was weird. But I want you to write yourself or record yourself doing a letter from the perspective of nailing the 4th quarter. And it doesn't have to just be business, but similar to what we do to Bold. And here's the question that I would encourage you to start it with. Imagine that you and I are having this conversation on January 2nd. What would have to happen, personally and professionally, for you to feel really happy with your progress? So I trust that you'll all do this. And I trust that, number 1, you will know when you're off. So 2, you'll know when you're on. So 3, we can avoid the holiday grief. And 4, we do that by writing our future selves a letter or recording a video, whichever one works best for you. So let's let this group be one of the few who crushes this 4th quarter and pushes all that momentum right into the spring season. And of course, we're here to help you do that. If you have questions, if you need anything around this, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, I'll look forward to connecting with those of you who have coaching calls this week. Thank you all for being here. We'll be here next week at 10 Central. Make it a great week. Bye-bye.